Hello and well met, people. This is Founder Layroon with Fantasy Grounds Academy. I'm going to practice using the Character Wizard. I think there's a lot of confusion and potentially some misconceptions. The Character Wizard is still basically always going to be in process. So no matter what, they're going to have to fix and add and adjust things depending on what type of content is being put out by Wizards of the Coast. And on top of that, this is not something that grew up with the rule set. So inherently, the Character Wizard was something that was added after the fact. So many people have to backtrack and go back and fix all the stuff that was already in place in order to use the Character Wizard. So it's not really something like Pathfinder 2 where they actually had a character builder to begin with and it grew with the rule set. So without further ado, let's take a look at this. There are some things that you need to understand. When you build your character the first time on your first level, and once you start saving your character, you can't go back and fix all the entries once you save it. So I'm going to bring up the Character Wizard. And up on the top of the bar up here, you have your race, stats, class, and background. You want to decide that in the first level. If you decide you don't like it later on, it's more difficult to go back and fix that as opposed to doing it at first level. So it is fairly still similar to the old drag and drop method, but you don't have to commit to each change. You're committing to all the changes once you have everything stacked up. So let me get started here. So I'm going to pick something that has a little bit more things to it, such as, let's go with a elf. So the race we're going to pick is an elf. And then we have to pick a sub-race. So if you want to pick, let's go with I want to go with a wood elf because they tend to have a lot more things added to their sheet. So I'll go ahead and add that. So if you want to read about these individuals, there's a little token next to this title here, or this little dragon head in this case. You click on that, that actually gives you the information. So if you're making a character and you're going along and you want to read about it, you can come up here and you can decide, okay, this is what happens with this particular race. Now, if you want to switch for some reason, you can always come back and decide to switch the subclass out. And then you can come over here also and switch the actual base class. So it just depends on what you're building. So if you were going to pick a Dragonborn, now you have all your ancestry here where you can choose. Whereas before, it was a manual process. So that's kind of cool. Or if you decide that you don't want to be one of those, then you can go to a half-elf variant, let's say. And then you're going to get all these other things that are going to stack up. So let's take a look at the half-elf variant. So we're going to select a sub-race that is basically the one that we want to choose to be half of. So it could be half drow, a wild, half-elf, aquatic, anything that's a little different, and then we can pick the ability scores, and then we can select an ability score, and then we can select the language. So it's really dependent on how and what you're going to build. So let's go back to race again. Same thing with a gnome. So you have all these different varieties of gnomes. So you have a lot of choices, and you're going to do this in the first level. Once you've leveled up and you save this, you're pretty much committed at that point. You want to make sure that you realize that, because if you try to go back after third level and say, oh, I don't want to be an elf or something, it's not going to work. You're going to pretty much have to build a new character or scrap this one. But if you're building up to a third level character and you haven't played it before, just remember that after first level, you can't go back and change all these without redoing it after you hit save. So I'm going to go to the elf again. And I think I want to do a dark elf. Those are always fun. And you already have the sub-race, and you can read about it. It already has some automatics here, which is based off of the standard array, plus whatever skill and races bonuses you get from your actual race. So right now it's 15, 16, 13, 12, 10, and 9 because of the sub-race. So if you didn't like those stats, you come over to the next box, which is the stats area. It says it's satisfied because it's already populated. So you can pick the standard array, or you can pick dice roll, or manual entry, or point buy. I'm going to go with dice roll. And as soon as I select it, it's going to roll out a whole bunch of dice. So you can take these numbers and rearrange them up here in the stat area by using these arrows. So you can rearrange the stat block, or the stats, and then your racial adjustments are counted here at the bottom. The totals are over here in the right. So if you didn't like your dice roll, you can just click on the dice roller, because I didn't like it, and then you got your next set of numbers. So you can keep rolling until you get something decent, or you can just pick them, which I think is a lot easier. Or if your DM allows you, you can do a point buy, and you set the points. There is a standard point buy, but I know I've used 27. I've seen people use 32, so it just depends. But it'll keep track of your ability score. So let's say, if I want to do a point buy, what quantities and how much do I want to spend on each different stat? And that's usually what happens. So when you have a point buy system for rules as written, you normally get 27 points. If your DM is generous, or you're playing like a hardcore game, maybe it'll give you 30. But you put in 27 up here on the upper right, and that sets your limit. Now what you're going to do is adjust accordingly. If you already have a 2 and a 1 in charisma and dexterity, you probably don't need to spend a lot of points in there. So I'm going to bring up my dexterity up to at least 15. That way I know I don't have to spend as many points. And that brings that up to 17, so I might just drop that down 1 to 14, and then now the total 16. I'm going to do the same thing with charisma. I'm going to move this up a little bit. So it's 11 now. I might go up 1 more. And now I still have 10 points to spend. So I'm going to go up to a strength of 10. I'm going to go up to a con of 10 and an intelligence of 10. And then the rest of the points, I think I'm going to put a few on wisdom, because I think I want to make a high-level priestess. So that's pretty close to what I would choose anyways for that. So she's got a pretty good dex. So it's 10, 16, 10, 10, 15, and 12. Might give her another 2 points in con, and that'll boost her up to, yeah, there we go. So that could be something that you can work out as you go. But now you haven't hit save, so you're not committed. So you can always go back and fix it at this point. So I want to go ahead and put it in dex. Let's see if that does anything. Nope, I went past the point buy. Yeah, it says I don't have enough points for that. So there we go. So that one was too much. Let's go with charisma. There we go. She's got a little bit higher charisma. That gives her a 13. It's more persuasive. Seems not too bad. That's a pretty good stat array. And I might take down the dex by 1 and bring up, let's see, I can't bring up that. Yeah, I'll just leave the dex where it was, because I got 2 points to spend. So maybe, yeah, I think I'll just leave it on dex. That'll help her defenses. So that's just one piece of this. Now you're going to go to your class. So what this wizard really does is, instead of the old way where you drag one thing over, you commit, you drag the other, you commit, what this does is lets you mix and match in the beginning up front at first level before you make your save. Whereas before, when you did it the old way, you had to actually commit to each one of these, and if you drug over the wrong one, or if you didn't want that and you wanted to go back, you couldn't do it. This way, at first level, you can. So when you select these items up here, you certainly can switch these around before you save. And that's basically the difference between the two, is to have that ability so that you're not committed and you're not likely to double up on your skills and stuff, because that's another thing that was problematic with the old way. So your skills right now, you have perception. Well, this wizard will let you know if you already have it. It won't let you select perception again because you already have it. So that's just a kind of a way to defeat that, or to keep that from happening. So it's important that you remember and discover and consider that you will have this issue. Even though you're using the wizard, at first level, you're still going to have to be committed to whatever you take at first level. Once you get past first level, it's just leveling up and adding a few things here and there. You can't go back and make any major revisions. That's what I'm getting at. So now the next thing is, let's pick a class. So I wanted to pick a priestess or something like that. So I'm going to pick a cleric. And there are some background or some class skills that I get. So I'm going to pick religion. And then one other I'm going to grab is history. So that's pretty good for a cleric. And that's something that you want to consider when you're first making your character. Okay. Now that we have that, this is for level 1. We're a cleric. We already have our proficiencies. We don't have any extra choices there. But now we need to pick which domain. So I think I'm going to do a war domain or perhaps trickery. That might be a better way. Trickery sounds better. And that will give her the trickery domain. And that will also add the class that she chose, which is a cleric. So that's satisfied. And let's see what the stats say. What did the stats say? It says character may select ability improvements at 4th level. Or okay, that's all that's saying. Okay, we're good there. Background. So here are all the backgrounds. I can pick Acolyte or one of the others. So if I pick Acolyte, I'm going to end up doubling up on these. It won't let me. So let me show you how that works. So now it says it gives me that, but now I still have a choice. So I need to pick something other than the ones that the background gave me. So I think as a kind of a way to theme this into this character is maybe persuasion. And that will help. And now I need to pick some languages, so I get 2. So I definitely want to have, let's see, Undercommon, which makes sense. And then the other is going to be probably Elvish or something like that. I think they already get Elvish, so let me pick Primordial, Deep Speech, Dwarvish. I think she deals with demons, so I'm going to pick Abyssal. So those are her language. She has the language of demons, the languages of Undercommon and Common, and she has Elvish. So that is basically her background stuff that she gets to choose. And if you want to read about the background, you can pull it up. Scroll down to the bottom. There's some ideals, bonds, and flaws that you can add to your character later. And then it gives you some starting equipment and that sort of thing. So as you go, you can read these little buttons that appear on the right once you've made a choice. And now your inventory. So this is where a lot of people go astray. Now just remember that this assumes that you have the player's handbook. If you use the SRD or third-party content, there's no guarantee that it's going to pull the information over properly. So if you're making a homebrew race, or if you're using the SRD, or if you bought something off the DM Guild that has some classes, unless it is built exactly the way it comes in the player's handbook and the way that Smiteworks builds their content, I don't think a lot of that's going to work, or some of it's going to be partially broken. So just keep that in mind when you're building your characters, that this was mainly set around the actual core rules, not so much homebrew and developing your own classes. That can be done, but you have to do it more manually. As of right now, this works well with the actual DnD5e content, not so much with homebrew and any other sort of add-on material. I've run into issues where people had complained about it, and it really come down to the fact that this wizard is centered around the actual core rules and not so much third-party content. So now we have some choices to make, and this would be based off of the class. Now, a choice doesn't mean you get the weapon, it just means you're proficient with it. So we're going to go with the mace, and instead of going through all these now, I'm going to go to purchase equipment, and I'm going to click on weapons, and on the top right filter by name, I'm going to type in mace. And there it is. Once you find it, you left click and drag it down to your inventory. So this is your live inventory down here, and up on top is the actual selection area. So now I'm going to go back to starting equipment. So my second choice is the type of armor. So she's probably going to have chainmail or scale mail or something like that. Nothing too heavy, so maybe chainmail. And then when I go to purchase equipment, I'm going to go to armor, and I'm going to search for chainmail. So you're not going to have a big list, a running list here, unless you do this. So maybe she'll get the change shirt. I don't see her wearing a full plate. Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit, so just give her the change shirt. So there's your chain. There's your armor. Now let's go back to starting gear. So our third choice is going to be her secondary weapon. So what I'd like to do is get a crossbow of some sort. So I'm going to pick light crossbow. There's short bow here. She can do a spear, quarterstaff. I'm going to do a light crossbow. And then I'm going to go to the purchase equipment, and I'm going to weapons. And I'll pick crossbow or light. Maybe I'll do light. Yeah, so here's the light crossbow. And don't forget that you have to get the ammunition. So if you're here already and you want to go to gear, because that's where that's stored, I'm going to look for bolts, and I'm going to look for the case to carry those in. So here's the crossbow bolts, which is part of this arsenal here. And then I'm going to type in case, and there's the case for the crossbow bolts. Now I'm going to go back to the starting equipment. And the fourth choice is I can get an explorer's pack or a priest pack. Probably priest pack, but if she's an adventurer where she goes out and does things and not just sit around a temple or down in the Underdark all day, I think I'll get her the explorer's pack. And that will add that to her inventory. If I go to purchase equipment and go to gear, where I'm at now, and I'm going to type pack, and what that's going to do is filter this out. So I get the explorer's pack. I'll drag and drop that here. And that comes with a bunch of things. If you want to know what's in it, you can read the description. So the next step is I'm going to go back to the starting equipment, and I'm going to pick a holy symbol. So she's going to have an emblem as her holy symbol. So if I go back to purchase equipment, and I'm in gear, I'll type holy. Yeah, there isn't an item for that, so you might have to actually make that. There are other modules that have those trinkets in there, and I'll show you there's another place that had it too. I believe it was the SRD, but that you can make up yourself. But basically it's just a role play thing mostly. And then you go to starting equipment again, and the shield is included, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you get a background choice of one of your items. So I'll pick a reliquary, just so it's complete. I have an emblem and a reliquary. So one came from my race, one came from my background. So that is basically what the choices I had. Now when I go back to purchase equipment, I'm going to grab a couple standard items. So one, I'm going to grab a robe or a cape. So she's got some robes, or maybe I want a cloak instead. Robes are a little bit heavy for adventuring. Nope, no cloak. So nonetheless, you want to come in here and get some of your stuff, but you can always do this after the character's saved and built. You don't need to do it right now. You can come back and I'll show you what I'm saying in a little while. So we got most of the starting equipment. That's what we're after. We're not trying to do all the equipment right now, just the main stuff. And now what we're going to do is go to inventory. And we've already looked at that. So let's go to spells. Now this is where you get to pick your spells. So right now it's on cantrip. It tells you how many are available. It says 1 of 2 here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick, let's see. I want to get Sacred Flame. Drag and drop that down here. And I get another one. So probably Thaumaturgy and one other. So let's go with Guidance. So those are her 3 spells that she chose, and there's no more available. So that is why, basically, you have this thing here to help you level up your spells. Then you click on level 1, and basically, you have 3 that you can prepare per day. However, this trickery one should be free because it's part of her domain. So I'm going to drag those first. So trickery and trickery. So those are 2 spells that she gets free, basically, or they would count as prepared, even though she's got several to choose from. So I'm going to go with, let's see, where's Inflict Wounds? Okay, so here's Bane. And let's go with Charm Person or Cure Wounds, Inflict Wounds. So see, this is counting up against the total. So when you do this, you might have to come back later and adjust as you need. Because this is already at -1, so that's because I chose these trickery domain ones. So Disguise Self was one of them. So we'll fix that later. But that's basically the starting spells. Clerics can have access to almost any spell. But I wanted to make sure that I got my domain spells over first. And then later I can adjust what other spells I have. Now that's the majority of it. Now we're going to go to feats. So if you had any feats, it says this character does not have feats available for selection. So that's because we don't meet those qualifications. So once you're done, this is the point where I'm going to go ahead and just type in something here, Drow Priestess or Drow Priestess. And at this point, you want to go back over the character to make sure everything is where you want it before you save it. So this still gives you the option to switch things around. Maybe you decide you don't want to be a cleric. Those sort of things. But once you hit save, it's going to go back and convert it back over to your basic character, which is the old way of doing it. So this is basically how you would use the wizard. You use it for your race, stats, class, background at first level. And then you can mix and match your inventory as you go. But basically, this is just trying to give you your starting equipment. Not all of your equipment, just the ones that comes with your background and your class. The next thing is feats if you qualify for it. And then you have the save option. So at this point, when you save the character, it is now committed to the character sheet. So this kind of holds it into a kind of a buffer, and then it also keeps it so that you don't double up on some of your skill choices as you build, and it helps you prompt you when you need to grab some of the other smaller details of your character sheet. So once I'm done, I'm going to hit save. And now you go back to the regular character sheet, and this is when it's basically committed. And this is where you would be at if you did the drag and drop method, except for you would have to start all over if you decide midstream that you don't like one of these choices, or in your skills, you can potentially be doubled up here. So that's one thing that the Character Wizard helps with. Now I'm going to double click on the portrait on the left, but I found a quicker way to do this. So you go to your assets, if you're a DM that is, and then you go to your portraits and then double click on your data folder, and then what you're going to do is look for a folder called Fantasy Grounds Fantasy and give it a minute to load those up. But once it does, you leave this asset window open until you're completely done with your characters. So now here are some dark elves here. So I'll just go with this dark elf female, drag and drop it up here, and there we go. So there's your basically your profile picture. And this becomes your token if you don't have a token. All your skills are filled out. All your abilities are listed. And then all your proficiencies are listed, and then your languages. So that's all filled in. And then for the Drow Priestess themselves, for their equipment, here is all of the equipment, and especially that stuff that was inside the Explorer's Pack. You just kind of come down through here. You can organize this by first taking away the backpack where it says empty. And then on the location line, you're going to type what container you would like to stick these items in. So the bedroll, I'm going to type the word B or the letter B, and it'll auto spell. And that's a capital B, so you want to spell it the same way as the location line. And then you don't put your, we're going to put the bolts in the case. So I'm going to type, this is the case itself, but I'm going to type case next to the bolts. So now they're in their own category. The chainmail, the light crossbow, we'll leave that. We're going to put the emblem probably in her backpack for now. And then the mace is going to be left out. The mess kit is something that she'll use to eat with. and then their food, and then she has a reliquary, which is part of her, probably on her cloak or something like that. And she has some rope coiled up that she might use. And then the tinderbox will be in her backpack. Torches, we'll put those in the backpack. She normally don't need those, and we'll just put the water skin in there. So once you do that, you click somewhere away. Now it's going to organize all these and indent them. And what happens is if you actually uncarry or stop carrying your backpack full of stuff, it'll take the current weight off, and then when you put it back on, it puts the weight back on. So it's just a matter of organizing your inventory and kind of using Fantasy Grounds to do a little bit more. Most inventory systems that I've come across and other VTTs are not this cool. So this one isn't bad. Also, it keeps track of attunement. So if you have magic items that require attunement, it will also note that here, as long as the item is identified and the item itself has the attunement quality or the setting on it. Okay, so you have your notes, which comes from your background. That is something you can choose. So if you go over to the front of your page and you open up this background area, you'll still be able to choose, just as like the old days here. So you come back here, and we will go down this list to these tables that are down here. And this is for personality traits, so you can roll this twice or once, whatever you want. So it says, I enjoyed fine drinking, high society among my temple's elite, rough living grates on me. Oh, that's going to be fun. So she gets upset real easy when she's not comfortable. That's going to be fun. And then the next one says, I've spent so long in the temple that I have little practical experience dealing with people outside the world. These are perfect. That's going to make her fun to play. And now the next thing is the ideals. So you'd roll that. And this one says, faith, I trust that my deity will guide my actions. I have faith that if I work hard, things will go well. Yeah, that doesn't really fit her too well. So I'm going to roll again. Aspiration, I seek myself to prove worthy of my God's favor by matching his or her. I can see that. So I'm just going to drag the text. And then the bonds. I'm going to roll that. And she says, everything I do is for the common people. I don't think so. I'll roll something else. Well, actually, that happened again, so maybe that's meant to be. So I'll just drag and drop that up there. And then the next roll is going to be on the flaw table. And you can pick these too. So maybe you don't want to roll. You can just say, okay, I want this one. So she says here, my piety sometimes leads me to blindly trust those that profess faith in my God, or I am inflexible in my thinking. I'm suspicious of strangers. Once I pick my goal, I become obsessed. Yeah, I like that one. So I'm just going to drag and drop it from the actual background. So that's basically all these little details in here. You're going to fill these out manually. Here for the crossbow, I'm on the actions tab. And I'm going to choose 20 for that, because that's how many bolts you get. And then here are her spells. And as you can see, I was able to pick those spells, no problem. It's just that it limited how many I can have prepared. I'm only supposed to have 3 prepared. But you have access to all the spells as long as you're able to. And then some of these are domain spells. So that trickery one and disguise self, those ones like charm person, disguise self, those are domain spells. So I'm going to create a separate area for those just so I can keep them separate. So on the bottom right, I'm going to click edit list. I'm going to click the blue star, and that makes a new group. And I'm just going to call these domain spells or domain. And then once I do that, I'm just going to take and drag these spells up there. So I'm going to get out of the edit mode, and I'm going to drag and drop this charm person and this disguise self, because those come with the trickery domain. And then I'm just going to right click and delete the header or the placeholder that I made. And then I'm going to delete these spells down here because I don't want to double up on them. And what happens is you can just keep them separate so you remember which ones go to which. So here's disguise self. I'm going to delete that. Now I still have one more spell that I can, or one more slot that I can use. So if I go to the spells area, you get 3 at this level. So I'm going to go ahead and filter this. So the source is going to be cleric, and then the level is going to be 1. And then I'll just go down this list and pick one other and drag it down here in the spell list, because these two don't count against my spells known or prepared. So I got inflict wounds, bane, and I think I'm going to go ahead and see. Let's go with command. So that's her 3 spells, and then when you're done with that, you can come down here and change the mode to preparation, and I'm going to prepare these spells here, which are my daily spells, and then the ones that are in the actual domain spells, they're not really going to count as a spell, but I'm going to go ahead and assign wisdom as the base casting, because I don't want it to mess that up. So there's 12 for the base casting for the DC and spell saves, and then these ones are already parsed for the wisdom of 12 for the bonus. So that is basically how that works. So that's all you have to do is use the character wizard at first level, and then you can decide to go in and fill in the finer details near the end. Now, one other thing is when you go to the main tab and you want to level up. So all you have to do is click on the magnifying glass that's next to the proficiency bonus. You open that up. That brings up the class and level window, and then you're going to click the level up button. And what that does is it brings up the character wizard. So if I bring that up, oops, let me go back to the character. So let's go to where did she go? Let's draw drow here. There we go. Let's see what happens. So bring that up, go to the main tab, go to here, click level up. There we go. So that is basically what you want. You want this to come up, and all you're going to do is you're going to go to your class tab and select 2 now. And if there's any other choices for that level, it will tell you. If not, if it's just going to be an increase for maybe your spells or whatever, then we'll find out. But if we're going to go to spells over here, we still have spells available for a 4. So we got that all situated. And then we're going to hit save. And that's basically going, you got Channel Divinity and some other things. So if you want to come over here, you can see that those have been added. You got some more hit points, and potentially you might have access to a couple more spells to be prepared for the day. So that's basically it. And when you're done, your DM will have it saved on their table. But if you want the character later on, or you want to use it in another game, ask them to export it for you. So technically, I can come in here as the game master, and I can use this edit button on the bottom right, and then there's a down arrow in which I can use to export the file. So if your DM wants to send you the character or whoever you're playing with, they can do that if they wish. So that's basically it. That's what I have for the character wizard. Hopefully that helps you guys out. Just remember that when you start making a character and you get past first level and you're deciding that you want to make changes, don't save it yet until you do. You can't go back to a character that's already made 5 levels in and fix it. You'll have to start that over. So what I recommend doing is after you save it, I recommend you export the character like I showed you at that level, and then when you go to level up again, you want to save those before you make any changes. That way, if it breaks or there's something not right, you still have a copy of the character. That way you don't get to level 7 and break it and then have to start all over. So that's just a quick tip. But anyhow, take care. Have a good day. Happy gaming. Hope to see you guys around. And if you need help with Fantasy Grounds or Fantasy Grounds Unity or something that you're inspired by, please stop by the Fantasy Grounds Academy Discord. The links will be in the chat or in the actual description of the video. And we'll see you guys around.